When HYBE finally spoke up about why Jungkook's solo project managed to dominate in the US, their explanation touched on far more than just sales or streaming records. The success is deeply tied to Jungkook's rare position as a cultural bridge, someone who doesn't merely release music, but who actively reshapes the way K-pop interacts with American audiences. To understand this, it's important to look at multiple layers: his identity as a BTS member, his image as a global pop star, his understanding of American entertainment dynamics, and the way US media and audiences engage with him. Unlike many idols who attempt to cross into Western markets, Jungkook's entry wasn't sudden. His presence in American music culture had been developing quietly for years, through collaborations, performances, and appearances that made US fans familiar with his name. By the time his solo album dropped, he was no longer seen as just a K-pop idol, but as a legitimate player in the US music industry. This perception shift is one of the most crucial reasons his album succeeded. Before discussing Jungkook individually, it's impossible to ignore the groundwork laid by BTS. Their years of effort in penetrating the American market, from award shows like the Billboard Music Awards to US television appearances, created a level of visibility that no other K-pop act had achieved at that scale. Jungkook benefited directly from this infrastructure. However, it would be a mistake to assume that this alone explains his success. Plenty of artists debut from famous groups but struggle to maintain solo visibility. What sets Jungkook apart is his ability to leverage BTS's legacy while also stepping beyond it. HYBE emphasized that American audiences were not only receiving his music, but also seeking it out. This shift from passive recognition to active demand indicates a deeper cultural penetration, something that very few Asian artists have achieved. A factor often overlooked is Jungkook's growing comfort with English and his adaptability to Western interview formats. American audiences value relatability and accessibility, and Jungkook has gradually built confidence in navigating those spaces. When HYBE executives commented on his US album success, they pointed out that American listeners felt a sense of familiarity, not just through the music itself, but through the way Jungkook engaged with them outside of the songs. Music critics in the US often highlight that global stars succeed when they can participate in the broader cultural conversation, not just when they deliver hits. Jungkook's ability to exist in that conversation, from late-night show appearances to collaborations with American producers, ensured that his music wasn't treated as a niche import. One of HYBE's strongest points was the recognition that Jungkook embodies a hybrid identity. In Asia, he is idolized as the golden maknae of BTS, carrying years of fan dedication and symbolic value. In the US, however, his identity is gradually being reconstructed. He is no longer boxed in as simply a K-pop idol, but instead positioned as a global pop figure who happens to come from Korea. This hybrid identity plays a critical role in how his music is received. American fans may not fully understand K-pop's idol system, but they don't necessarily need to. Instead, they see a performer who meets their expectations of a pop star, charisma, strong stage presence, and music that aligns with global trends. The cultural translation gap is smaller for Jungkook, because his branding has been designed to move fluidly between both worlds. A trap that many international artists fall into when entering the US market is over-localization, altering their sound or image too much in an attempt to fit American standards. HYBE avoided this with Jungkook. While his solo album clearly included Western influences, it still retained elements of his K-pop artistry. This balance is critical. American audiences are increasingly drawn to authenticity and uniqueness, especially in an era of streaming where global genres mix freely. Jungkook's album did not sound like a mere imitation of existing US pop. Instead, it represented a fusion that allowed listeners to enjoy something familiar but also refreshingly distinct. In this sense, Jungkook wasn't simply crossing into the US market, he was reshaping it by introducing a hybrid soundscape. Success in the US is often tied to narrative building. Media outlets do not just review albums, they construct stories around artists. For Jungkook, the story was compelling. The youngest member of the world's biggest boy group finally stepping into the spotlight as a soloist. This narrative created intrigue beyond the existing BTS fandom. HYBE capitalized on this by coordinating strategic press engagements, interviews, and media appearances. Every feature framed Jungkook not just as a BTS member trying solo work, but as someone whose individual artistry was worth attention. That distinction matters. In the US, media narratives strongly influence how casual listeners interpret music. Jungkook's album benefited from this ecosystem of storytelling, reinforcing his legitimacy. The US market today is no longer about physical CDs or local radio dominance. It's about digital reach. Platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube are inherently global. Jungkook's advantage lies in the fact that he entered a market already conditioned to accept global sounds. US listeners in 2023 and beyond are accustomed to consuming music from Latin America, Africa, and Asia without hesitation. HYBE highlighted that Jungkook's numbers in the US were not artificially inflated. They reflected genuine demand across multiple platforms. His solo album benefited from a globalized digital infrastructure where borders matter less. This reality sets him apart from earlier generations of Asian artists who faced gatekeeping from radio or record labels. Another crucial factor is timing. The US pop industry has always relied on cycles of new icons to maintain excitement. In recent years, there has been a sense of stagnation. Many legacy artists remain dominant, but younger figures struggle to achieve the same cultural grip. Jungkook arrived in this environment as a refreshing figure, young, global, and equipped with both proven stage skills and an existing loyal fanbase. HYBE executives argued that his solo success was not accidental, but a response to an existing demand in the US music scene for new, globally representative icons. In other words, Jungkook filled a gap that the US industry itself had left open. While fan support is an obvious driver, HYBE pointed out something different. American fans of Jungkook mobilize in ways that resemble mainstream pop fandoms rather than strictly K-pop stans. This distinction is important. In the US, pop fandoms are less about systematic streaming or organized voting, and more about creating cultural buzz. Jungkook's fans adapted their behavior to fit this mold, spreading his presence across social media platforms, playlists, and public conversations in a way that felt organic to American culture. This meant that when Jungkook's solo album arrived, it wasn't pushed solely through traditional K-pop fan mechanisms. Instead, it circulated naturally through word of mouth and media amplification, which helped it break out of the niche label and be treated as mainstream pop content. Another overlooked layer is how industry insiders in the US received Jungkook's solo music. HYBE emphasized that producers, songwriters, and executives who worked with him vouched for his talent and dedication. This insider recognition matters greatly because the US industry is built on networks. When respected figures in the industry validate an artist, it accelerates their acceptance in broader circles. Jungkook's collaborations were not random. They were carefully chosen to place him alongside names that already had credibility in the American market. This not only ensured higher quality production, but also allowed industry professionals to perceive him as a serious player rather than a foreign experiment. Finally, the larger cultural moment cannot be ignored. America is in a phase of heightened curiosity about global pop culture. K-pop, in particular, has become a lens through which many younger American audiences engage with foreign media. Jungkook's album was released into this environment, meaning it carried the dual weight of being both an individual artistic work and a representation of K-pop's global influence. HYBE's statement made it clear that his success was not just personal, but structural, a reflection of how K-pop as a whole has shifted global entertainment dynamics. Jungkook happened to be the right figure at the right time, with the right mix of identity and artistry to capitalize on that shift. Timing is everything in the US music industry. Releases can be overshadowed by major American artists if scheduled poorly. HYBE carefully studied release calendars, avoiding clashes with massive US pop albums, and instead choosing windows where Jungkook could dominate attention. They also paid attention to cultural timing. For example, dropping singles and promotional content around summer ensured alignment with seasonal playlists, festivals, and radio trends. In America, summer is often associated with light, catchy tracks, and HYBE deliberately structured Jungkook's releases to match these listening habits, making them more likely to be picked up organically by radio DJs and playlist curators. HYBE knew that to be accepted into the US mainstream, Jungkook needed more than fan loyalty. He needed industry validation. By working with well-known US producers and collaborating with artists who already had credibility, Jungkook's album gained immediate legitimacy. This wasn't just about featuring a Western name for clout. HYBE ensured the partnerships were organic, aligning with Jungkook's vocal style and musical preferences. These collaborations acted as a bridge for American listeners. They provided a sense of familiarity while simultaneously introducing Jungkook's unique artistry. When an American artist co-signs a global act, it lowers cultural barriers and makes casual listeners more willing to explore. One of HYBE's most effective strategies was ensuring Jungkook appeared across multiple media platforms simultaneously. In the US, visibility is often fragmented. An artist can't rely on one outlet alone. To counter this, HYBE placed Jungkook in a variety of contexts. Television appearances on late-night shows, which historically serve as gateways for international artists. Radio interviews across major stations, reinforcing his presence with casual commuters and regional listeners. Magazine covers and features that highlighted not just his music, but his fashion and lifestyle influence. By saturating the US entertainment ecosystem, HYBE made it almost impossible for American audiences to miss Jungkook's presence. Even if someone wasn't a BTS fan, they would encounter him through one medium or another. HYBE also integrated Jungkook's fashion identity into the marketing campaign. In America, pop stars are often valued not only for their music, but also for their lifestyle branding. By highlighting Jungkook's connection to Calvin Klein and other global fashion narratives, HYBE positioned him as a cultural tastemaker, not just a singer. This brand alignment mattered because it placed Jungkook in conversations beyond the music industry. Fashion magazines, lifestyle blogs, and entertainment outlets covered him, ensuring that even non-music fans were exposed to his image. This multi-industry crossover expanded his reach significantly, giving the album cultural weight beyond streaming charts. In today's US market, Playlists are more influential than radio for many listeners. HYBE's marketing team worked to ensure Jungkook's tracks landed on high-profile Spotify and Apple Music playlists. This wasn't accidental. It was the result of targeted negotiations, timing, and positioning the songs in line with American pop trends. Playlisting ensures casual discovery, AUS. Listener who never intended to search for Jungkook could stumble upon his track while listening to Today's Top Hits or Pop Rising. Once hooked, they could explore the rest of his album. This organic discovery mechanism is one of the reasons his solo success extended beyond the BTS fanbase. HYBE also capitalized on TikTok, which is currently the most powerful music marketing tool in the US. Instead of relying solely on fans to create trends, HYBE seeded dance challenges, snippets, and influencer partnerships that made Jungkook's music viral. The difference here is subtle but important. TikTok trends don't work if they feel forced. HYBE allowed influencers and creators to interpret Jungkook's tracks in their own styles, making the content feel organic. This broadened his exposure to Gen Z audiences who consume music primarily through short-form videos. American media thrives on stories. HYBE understood this and shaped Jungkook's narrative carefully. The story wasn't just BTS member goes solo. It was the youngest of BTS proving himself on the world stage. A global star redefining what it means to be an Asian artist in America. The new face of global pop bridging East and West. These storylines gave journalists and media outlets hooks to frame their coverage. Importantly, they allowed American audiences to perceive Jungkook's solo work not as a side project, but as a cultural event worth following. HYBE also used controlled scarcity to amplify demand. By limiting certain types of content in the early rollout, for instance, holding back full live performances until key promotional moments, they created a sense of anticipation. This strategy mirrored Hollywood movie rollouts, where teasers are released gradually to keep audiences engaged. When Jungkook finally did appear live or dropped a full performance video, it felt like an event. American audiences accustomed to celebrity-driven spectacles responded positively to this approach. While HYBE avoided over-relying on K-pop-style fan strategies, they didn't abandon ARMY altogether. Instead, they integrated fan power into US cultural spaces. For example, organizing fan projects that tied into American charity events or local community drives, encouraging fan streaming not just on Korean platforms, but on US-centered ones, coordinating flash mobs and billboard ads in American cities, creating local visibility. This integration allowed American passers-by to see Jungkook's cultural footprint in real-world spaces, reinforcing his relevance beyond online fandom circles. Perhaps the most overlooked factor is HYBE's grasp of the US entertainment logic. In America, success is not only about sales, but about events. Major album launches are treated as spectacles, whether through high-profile performances, listening parties, or public stunts. HYBE executed this flawlessly for Jungkook. Every milestone from teaser drops to interviews was treated like a mini-event. This consistent sense of momentum kept his album at the center of cultural conversation for weeks, preventing it from being overshadowed by other releases.